Incumbent Democrats across the country are currently quaking in their boots after witnessing one socialist after another defeat all of their pro-corporate colleagues. However, Jared Moskowitz of Florida's 25th congressional district is trying to play it cool by pretending like socialism doesn't exist in his state.
The DSA has been increasing their power in New York. They got
Socialists.
The Democratic Socialists of America. You know, they have a mayor, and he's obviously flexing his power. Thankfully, we live in Florida, and we don't have Democratic Socialists like they have in New York.
Yeah. I guess that the boogeyman doesn't have any power over you if you refuse to acknowledge his existence. But unfortunately for Jared Moskowitz, the DSA does, in fact, exist in Florida. And unfortunately for him, he has a socialist primary opponent named Oliver Larkin. And he joins me today. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Mike.
Really excited to talk to you. You've had a very interesting week. I mean, we all have had an interesting week, but after the string of victories we've seen from DSA candidates, you raised more than $100,000 in a week because the momentum very clearly is building. Talk about what it's been like just as a DSA-backed candidate to witness all of your colleagues win every single election, basically.
I think it's real proof of concept for exactly the kind of life-changing policies that we're espousing, like Medicare for all, like universal child care, paid family and medical leave, a minimum wage that's a living wage of $25 or more an hour. And I think this is what the American people are hungering for so greatly, not restricted to any one specific congressional district or locale, but just working class people all across the country that are ready for a Democratic Party that stands up and fights for them. And that's something that we've exhibited with our own campaign. We had a massive rally virtually on Monday night with Hassan Piker, Sarah Nelson, the president of the AFA-CWA. We had streamers. We had New York Assembly member, soon to be Congresswoman Claire Valdez, on the stream with us. So the momentum has just been extraordinary. That whole rally came together in less than 48 hours, just because I think people are seeing the possibility and seeing how far we can actually push this movement and push this party into the halls of power. And that's something that we intend to do here in Florida's 25th district.
Yeah, I mean, if it could happen in New York and Colorado and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, there's no reason why it can't happen in Florida. And one thing that I find so fascinating about this particular race is that your opponent, Jared Moskowitz, is by far and away one of the most conservative Democrats in the country. And I don't think that he would dispute that. This is an individual who brags about how he was appointed by Ron DeSantis twice. So he's a DeSantis Democrat. When it comes to the issue of the Iran war, he has said on Fox News, which is an interesting place to go to if you're a Democrat, that he's to the right of J.D. Vance, and he agrees more with Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton.
What I would like to see actually is a little tougher language coming out of the Trump administration. I'm to the right of this issue, to the J.D. Vance Witkoff approach, and I agree, quite frankly, more with Senator Lindsey Graham and probably Senator Tom Cotton. Iran is the weakest they've been in a period of time. Now is not the time to appease them.
So I don't think people really understand just how conservative this guy is and how Democrats don't have to put up with this. So can you just talk through his record? Oh, also another thing that really made me mad about him is he was one of the handful of Democrats that voted to censure Al Green after Al Green challenged Trump at the State of the Union. So I don't understand why this individual is even a Democrat. I feel like if the Republican Party wasn't explicitly fascist and they were just neoliberal and pro-corporate and neocons, he'd probably join them. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. And Congressman Moskowitz, I mean, this is someone who I think felt completely unaccountable to any Democratic voters after he had no primary opposition whatsoever in 2024. He was elected on the glide path in 2022. This is someone who his father was a bigwig. If you get off of the Sawgrass Expressway, you get onto Michael Moskowitz Drive, someone who raised money for Clinton, Gore, Lieberman, and Jared Moskowitz was given a plum position on the Parkland City Commission when he was still in law school at 25 years old. He's been in elected office for 2 decades. And when he was in the state legislature, Ron DeSantis plucked him out of obscurity with the personal lobbying of his friend in the state legislature, Matt Gaetz, who he described this when he was on CNN when Trump picked Matt Gaetz to be his nominee for United States Attorney General. Jared Moskowitz said, Matt Gaetz personally lobbied Governor DeSantis to make Jared Moskowitz the director of the Department of Emergency Management. And After that appointment was done, Moskowitz went to the private sector. He made millions of dollars consulting for private home construction companies that are building these perpetual rental communities that are sold off to private equity and corporate landlords. And then Ron DeSantis picked him again to be placed on the Broward County Commission. And then it was from there that he was elected to Congress. He endorsed a Moms for Liberty endorsed school board candidate in 2024, someone who is now the president of Broward College and at an impasse with the contract negotiations with the faculty workers there. So Jared Moskowitz has just felt completely like there's no accountability with the Democratic base that he's supposed to serve. We've seen a lot of reporting in the last week that there's maybe one moderate Democrat in a swing district who's concerned about the Mamdani wing of the Democratic Party and considering leaving the party for the Republican side. And there are a lot of questions out there about Congressman Moskowitz, the very first Democrat in Congress to join the Doge caucus, the only Florida Democrat to vote for the Laken Riley Act, and someone who, again, censured Al Green, censured Rashida Tlaib, has always had his sharpest words for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and finds comfort and solace in Fox News and the folks on the right who he has so much in common with.
Yeah, it really is unacceptable. I don't think any Democratic voter in this district should be putting up with that. One thing, and I'm curious to know your thoughts, is one thing that I think he believes and why he gets away with this is that this is more of a purple district, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a Cook R+3. However, your internal polling shows that you would beat both Republicans. So I'm curious if you think he has more leeway because of the perception that, like, a far left or socialist candidate wouldn't win, and how you're kind of mitigating that inevitable attack when it comes forward that, this district doesn't support socialism. Like, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's this myth that the non-party affiliated voter or the independent voter is just like right down the middle on every issue, when the reality is, in fact, that non-party affiliated voters don't trust the two-party system. They do not trust the corporate establishments in both political parties, and they're done with politics as usual and with the political status quo. When we consider that young people are overwhelmingly registering not as Democrats or Republicans, but as non-party affiliated voters, it's because neither political party has given young people a reason to vote for them. And that's something that's so exciting about our campaign. In a closed primary state such as Florida, we're giving young voters a reason to join the Democratic Party. But I do believe that Congressman Moskowitz feels some license, and it's bolstered by the corporate media that you have to chase this mythical moderate that Kamala Harris chased all the way to losing all 7 swing states in the 2024 election. And that's just been proven false time and time again. Florida Democrats have run former Republicans like Charlie Crist, who got blown out by 20 points to Ron DeSantis after Andrew Gillum, a Bernie Sanders endorsed Medicare for All supporting nominee, came within a percentage point. So voters in Florida actually support progressive policy. We've passed a minimum wage to $15 an hour constitutional amendment in 2020. I was proud to work on the campaign in 2018 with Amendment 4 to restore voting rights to over 1 million Floridians, even though the constitutional amendments failed in 2024 because we have this undemocratic 60% ballot threshold. We had 1.5 million more Floridians vote for abortion rights than against with Amendment 4 in 2024. Also supporting recreational marijuana, which Jared Moskowitz in the 2022 primary for this seat was the only Democratic candidate not to support legalization. He only supported decriminalization. And so, time and again, he's taking these right-leaning positions that even when Florida voters don't trust the Democratic Party, they support these progressive policy prescriptions. And I think that's why we need a Democratic Party, and we frankly need the Democratic Socialists of America to take it over and to show that we are fighting for the working class of this country, point blank, no questions about it.
Yeah, I love that you talked about how basically you're breathing new life into the Democratic Party by getting people energized, because that's the core difference between the strategy of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, they always try to shore up support within their own base, get them galvanized and excited, whereas the Democratic Party, they always try to run away from their base, and they try to go for these mythical moderates, as you said, who they think are going to be their only chance at victory, when in actuality, there's so many people across the country, young people, even older people as well, they're so sick and tired of politics. They think that both parties aren't going to deliver for them, and they just feel like the Democratic Party isn't going to do what's needed to be done to improve their material conditions. So a lot of people kind of just check out. I've seen it, myself personally. I live in Oregon, which is a deep blue state, but all of our politicians are extremely captured by large multinational corporations. Our governor is basically turning our entire state into a big AI data center. And the people that I talk to, they've checked out. So many people, Democrats, liberal minded people, they're like, I'm done voting. Like, my mom, for example, she voted for the first time for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and then voted again in 2020. And I talked to her again. She's like, I'm good. I have no reason to vote, and a lot of young people feel the same. So it's people across the spectrum, different age ranges, where they just feel like there's no sense in even bothering with politics because the Democrats aren't going to deliver. And the DSA is breathing new life into this party and giving people a reason to get out. But yet, they're saying that, oh, you're not the real Democrats. Respond to that, because that is one thing I'm increasingly seeing, this idea that, these socialists, they're not real Democrats, even though the base is voting for them. But like, what's your response to those attacks that we've been seeing from the likes of James Carville and whatnot?
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up the fact that this is not just young voters, and I pointed to young voters because I am one. I'm turning 34 years old on the 4th of July.
Happy
but
birthday.
One thing that Thank you. One thing that really, before I was even considering running for this seat, one thing that made me start to consider it was I went to an Indivisible town hall last spring in April of 2025. If you recall, this was in the height of the Doge effort to slash the federal government. Voters were scared. They were angry. We live in an older district with Indivisible crowd where I was perhaps one of the youngest people in a room full of 450 or some odd Indivisible members in Broward County. And when the event organizers announced that they had invited Congressman Moskowitz and he did not even dignify them with a reply, they started booing. They got in on open mic and they said, we need to find someone to primary this guy. And this is at the time before redistricting. This was a D+2 seat. Kamala Harris only won it by 2 points. But the Democratic voters, the Indivisible, and I want to also give credit, a lot of NPA and disaffected Republican voters in Indivisible, they were not saying, oh, we need to just make do with the guy in office because if we don't, the Republicans are going to take the seat. No, they felt like they could do better. And when Jared Moskowitz went on Fox News, again, a recurring theme, and was asked about skipping this town hall after the local media said Democratic organizers frustrated. Jared Moskowitz has not had a single public town hall since he was elected to Congress, and that has persisted. You know what Jared Moskowitz said on Fox News? He called Indivisible a special interest group. I'll tell you what the special interest groups are. It's APAC, it's AI, it's cryptocurrency, it's the big sugar billionaires that Jared Moskowitz has taken money from, as they're also lavishing it on Donald Trump, on his super PAC, and on his ballroom. So I think it's just really an indicator that voters are sick of, being told that we have to make do with crumbs, that we have to just make do with the most right-leaning Democrat if we're in a purplish district. I think we need to expand our horizons and expand our imaginations. And I think that's one thing that when we consider the fact that Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Delano Roosevelt were attacked as socialists in their time, and FDR was talking about the New Deal saving capitalism, and maybe I have a different perspective there. I don't think that capitalism is ultimately serving people, especially as we accelerate into a catastrophic level of climate change. I just think it is incompatible with living on a habitable planet with a sustainable economy that works for everyone. But we have these core questions about the system as it is today, and a lot of the fear mongering about democratic socialism is actually projecting on the conditions that we have today, that there are going to be higher prices. Well, there are higher prices right now. That there's going to be authoritarianism. Well, there's authoritarianism right now with our political, civil, and constitutional rights being trod on by ICE, by the Trump administration, by NSPM 7, by the mass surveillance architecture of the Patriot Act, and FISA Section 702, warrantless surveillance on the American people. I mean, these are the things that are fear-mongered about democratic socialism, and yet we're living under these conditions right now, under capitalism, under Republican rule. So I just don't think the fear mongering lands, and that's certainly been my experience talking to voters, especially after I started campaigning right after Mayor Mamdani won the Democratic nomination for New York City mayor, and these older voters that go to the No Kings rallies, they go to the Rage Against the Regime protests. And I was clipboarding, I was collecting petition signatures. We qualified for the ballot by candidate petition. And more often than not, I'm met with curiosity rather than apprehension when I describe myself as a democratic socialist, because older voters, young voters, they see that this is the movement that is working on their behalf, and it's giving them a reason to organize and to get involved, because this is a movement that's predicated on going door to door and actually talking to our neighbors. We're not, cooking up something that a consultant in Washington, D.C. made for us, or that a think tank bubbled up. It is responding directly to the material needs and interests of the voters that we're talking to every single day when we're out canvassing.
Yeah, and that's another really important difference between your ilk and the Democratic Party establishment, where you can't really get a straight answer from any of them. When you ask them a question that is, challenging or makes them uncomfortable, you can kind of see them trying to remember the talking point that was best focus group tested. Whereas with individuals like you speak with confidence and knowledge about the subject you're discussing, but you can tell it's authentic. Like, you believe the things that you say. And, with regard to this difference between socialists and capitalists within the Democratic Party, another difference, aside from just like what your preferred economic model is, another difference is just morality. I'm sorry, but the Democratic Party, they lost so much legitimacy when they chose to unconditionally back a genocide. And the fact that they have never really reckoned with that fact, and many of their members still support genocide, that to me, it has to be addressed. And there's just been no reckoning in the party, even though Kamala Harris, at least according to one IMEU poll, lost in part because of that. A large portion of 2020 Biden voters said we're not voting for Harris because of the genocide. So I'm curious, what has been the response to you? Because you are very clearly somebody who opposes genocide unequivocally, which I appreciate, and all DSA candidates do. But what's been the response to constituents? Like, when Mamdani was still campaigning, there was this idea that, oh, he is opposed to Israel, so he isn't viable. There's too many Jewish voters in the district to support somebody who is anti-Israel. And that's now, it's starting to change, because a majority of Democratic voters who are Jewish oppose Israel. They think it's a genocide. But I'm curious, what has been the response to you in your district in particular?
Yeah, and campaigning in South Florida, this is now, after redistricting, perhaps the second most heavily represented district of Jewish Americans in the country, after New York's 12th district. And people said about Mayor Mamdani that he could not possibly win in a city with, I believe, the highest population of Jews worldwide after Israel. But people, regardless of their faith or ethnicity or racial background, we just don't support our taxpayer dollars going towards genocide, going towards a Jim Crow racial apartheid system in Palestine. And I keep waiting to have someone confront me over, being outspoken against U.S. military aid to Israel, and calling out our complicity in this genocide. But more often than not, I'm met with folks who they're grateful, and it's so easy to connect now how proximate these issues really are when we are struggling with a historic cost of living crisis in Florida, where Florida Atlantic University ran a poll last fall that found that more than half of Floridians are considering leaving the state due to the cost of living crisis. And that's even more acute among Gen Z and among millennials. We did a poll in this new district where 86% of Democratic primary voters want to condition U.S. military aid to Israel based on international law or cease it entirely. 50% want to condition aid, 36% want to cease aid entirely. That's also 68%, more than 2/3 of the general election environment. That's Democrats, Republicans, and non-party affiliated voters. And with Congressman Moskowitz, this is someone who not only voted to censure Rashida Tlaib, one of 22 Democrats to do so, he also authored the House amendment barring the State Department from citing data from the Gaza Health Ministry, including death tolls that even the IDF now accepts. So when we talk about literal genocide denial, that's what Jared Moskowitz has done. And he's just voted time and again in the interests of this extremist government in Israel, not only Benjamin Netanyahu, but Itamar Ben-Gvir, who had a portrait hung in his house of Baruch Goldstein, the mass murderer who slaughtered 29 Palestinians in a mass shooting in 1994. I mean, this is Israel's, one of the Israeli government ministers who is himself convicted of terrorism charges, celebrating a mass murderer. And our congressman, who currently today represents the community of Parkland, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, the site of the deadliest high school mass shooting in world history. How could we have someone voting in the interests of a government that celebrates mass murderers like that? It is incomprehensible. So voters here are ready for that courageous candidate that is willing to call out, despite what AIPAC might have you feel about South Florida. It's not AIPAC's backyard. This is a community like any other across the country where working class people who are struggling to get by just do not want to see our taxpayer dollars, as we're spending upwards of $1 billion a day on this illegal war with Iran that Jared Moskowitz gave Donald Trump a permission slip to carry out, calling Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey's War Powers Resolution the Ayatollah Protection Act, as Jared Moskowitz has purchased Lockheed Martin stock 4 times as a sitting member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Lockheed Martin stock that hit an all-time high on the market the Monday after Donald Trump launched these illegal strikes. Jared Moskowitz has continued to load up on defense stocks in the months since this war began, and voters see the level of personal profiteering from this death and destruction that the United States is perpetuating across the world, whether it's our own military or supporting the military of Israel that is, violating international law. They've been violating it every single day since 1967 when they've been illegally occupying the West Bank. So voters are done with it, and I'm frankly ready to correct the national narrative about South Florida. This is a community that, just like any other across the country, just like New York City, we're ready for Democratic candidates that speak out on broad-based human rights, human values, and self-determination for all people, including Palestinians, and investing our taxpayer dollars where they belong, here at home.
Yeah, well said. And listen, I'm going to encourage all of my viewers to donate to your campaign. I will have a link in the show notes down below. We've got to get you across the finish line. I feel more confident than ever. I think that this is going to be a political earthquake when it happens because, there's always some reason to sow doubt for the establishment, that is to sow doubt. It's only in Florida. Well, it's this one-off in Colorado and whatnot. But I feel like your district in particular really would be the ultimate wake-up call and reality check for the Democratic Party establishment. So just tell us what we can do and what my audience can do to help you get elected, because we got to see you in Congress too.
Yeah, please donate at the link in the show notes. We just wrapped up our final end of quarter FEC fundraising deadline of this primary election, which is on August 18th. So now anything that you contribute, it is barely touching the campaign account before it's going back out into advertising and reaching the voters that we need to talk to. Because as you said, Mike, I'm not only competing with Jared Moskowitz in the primary, I'm leading the 2 Republican contenders in this general election. And we need the resources to communicate, so please donate. Even a $20 donation helps us serve about 1,000 ad impressions on Facebook and Instagram. So your contribution, no amount is too small to make an impact in this race. And without taking any AIPAC, crypto, AI, or any other kind of special interest money, it is by doing interviews like this that we've been able to raise the amount of resources that we need to compete in this election. Would also ask your viewers to visit oliverforcongress.com. And if you happen to be in Florida, come volunteer with us, come canvass with us, go door to door like I do myself. Or if you're anywhere else in the country, sign up to make phone calls. We have ballots that are dropping next week. So voters are going to be receiving their ballots and filling them out in the coming days. And we need to talk to them right now, because as soon as people learn about my candidacy, they gravitate towards us. It's an easy decision. These are easy conversations on the doors. In 15 seconds, you say, I'm running against the only Democrat in the state of Florida who voted for Laken Riley, a 2-time political appointee of Ron DeSantis, the very first Democrat in Congress to join Doge. And I'm not taking any corporate PAC money. I organized a union in my workplace with the News Guild Communication Workers of America. I'm a former Bernie Sanders campaign staffer, and I believe in Medicare for all, a $25 minimum wage, universal child care, paid family and medical leave, and ending U.S. military support for genocide and apartheid. And people are like, sign me up. It's an easy decision. This is one of the clearest contrasts of any Democratic primary race across the country. And, we have an imperative. If we want to make the Democratic Party one that is more inclusive, that embraces this philosophy of democratic socialism that we see when people ask me about it, I just point to the fact that Mayor Mamdani and Representative Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Sanders are the three most popular politicians in the United States of America, and they're all democratic socialists. It's an easy connection for people to make, and I think people trust the authenticity and the integrity of rejecting the corporate PAC money, and they know that, as you said, Mike, I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. There's no trying to dress it up to conform to political party establishment or any corporate donors.
Yeah, well said. Well, Oliver, we are absolutely rooting for you. And if you end up winning, when you win, I will say, you'll see a breaking news video from me where I am also speechless because I've been living for this. So I appreciate you carrying on the torch of the Democratic Socialist movement in Florida. So thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. Appreciate everything that you do with your program. And thank you to all the viewers out there for supporting our race.